into the frying pan from the fire. And also, I'd like to extend an appreciation to Paul Schwengel and also Jim Brandt. They also had come in for the interviews for that job, and it's refreshing to see people in our community step forward. And we appreciate it and thank you very much. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? And would you please stay standing for a moment of silence in honor of our late President George H.W. Bush, and also for this remarkable country we live in and the place we live. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, next we need to approve the agenda, and I'd like to switch 9 and 8. Bradley is here, and it's got a little bit longer distance to go.
Do we have a memorandum from on 8? We never got one in.
From,
DC, EDC?
he's coming.
Oh,
Okay, if that's all right, then I'll move to approve the agenda as we changed.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, the motion carries. We have the minutes of 11/21/2018. Any additions or corrections to those?
I'll move to approve the minutes of November 21st, 2018.
Second.
Motion by Gause, seconded by Ward. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. And then also the special board meeting of November 27th. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Lowry, seconded by Gause. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And finally, we have, excuse me, the payment of the bills. Are there any questions?
I have one addition to that list you got there. It's for service motors for $387. That pumps the total up to $12,097.92.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the bills with the addition of the service motors bill for $387.
I'll second that.
Motion by Lowry, seconded by Gause. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Public input. Anybody have anything they'd like to say in general? Anything anybody like to comment on an agendized item? If not, we'll quickly move on then. And we'll call on Brad from R.W. Byrd.
Oh, Mr. Lowry,
Yes.
you're going to skip over number 6?
We switched.
Number 6.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, we didn't switch. We'll get to it. Sorry, Brad.
Okay, that's okay. So just before the meeting, I handed out a packet of information, and this summarizes the resolution you'll be considering tonight on the financing. This is the final step in the borrowing, and with your action tonight, the interest rates will be locked in, and then pending the closing that is coming up in a few weeks. So I'll walk through this and answer any questions. So first, I'd like to say this was a very successful note issuance. We were scheduled to be out in the marketplace today to lock in rates, but due to the death of President Bush, the bond market was closed, so we accelerated our plans. We were in the market yesterday. Baird committed to the underwriting yesterday afternoon, and we're holding these rates now through today pending your approval. So what we're looking at is a general obligation promissory note, issue size of $1.5 million, and this will settle. The funds will be wired to the town on December 27th. We're scheduled for a first payment in March of 2019. There's funds included in the financing to make that payment because you don't have it written into the budget that was adopted. And this is callable. It's eligible to be prepaid beginning on September 1st of 2026. Some very good news from Standard & Poor's. They're the agency that assigns bond ratings. They've assigned a AA rating to the town's credit. So to put that in perspective, AAA is the highest rating, the very best rating they assign. One level below that is AA+, and the level that they've assigned for the town is AA. So you're 2 notches away from the very highest rating that they would assign. It's a really good credit quality rating. I'll go into a little more detail in a minute, but it does help really to pull down these interest costs. The estimate that I had provided 2 weeks ago when I was here was 3.26%. The rate that will be locked in with the adoption of the resolution tonight is 2.96%. So I'm excited to get that rate in below 3%, and that's locked. It's fixed for 10 years. That rate will not change. I've updated the detailed financing plan on the following page. This is structured with, again, a 10-year repayment period, equal principal and interest payments in total from top to bottom at roughly $175,000. By way of context, because of the lower interest rates, the total cost, the total principal and interest, is $41,500 less than what I had presented at the last meeting. And then finally, I've attached the complete rating report from Standard & Poor's. I won't go through this line by line, but I did want to make sure that everybody had a copy for your records. But also, just to hit on a few of the highlights, they have some very positive things to say about the town. Standard & Poor's talks about the town's strong economy, adequate management with standard financial policies and practices in place, strong budgetary performance, very strong budgetary flexibility, very strong liquidity, strong debt and contingent liability profile. So all of those, that very nice language is factored into the assignment of this AA rating. So with that, I'd be glad to go into additional detail if anyone likes or answer any questions.
Any questions anybody has?
Is this the schedule we're going to be working off of, Brad, or?
Yeah, I will provide a more detailed schedule for Janet, but yes, on an annual basis, that's the schedule. What's not shown here is that there's actually semi-annual interest payments, but in terms of the total annual payments, that's accurate.
Okay.
If that's the same thing, if that's the same payment schedule that Quarles and Brady sent over this afternoon?
It is.
Then we've got that.
Okay.
Any other questions anybody has? I think we're all very pleased. Thank you.
Good. It was a very successful transaction. Really glad it turned out this well.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Brad, where did all the information about Liberty Grove come from in terms of this evaluation?
There, publicly available information, including your financial statements, and then also postings to the Emma website, a disclosure website would be available to Standard & Poor's. And then also there was a conference call, a really in-depth conference call held with village staff, town staff. I was on it, and the analyst from Standard & Poor's, where they asked specific questions that they had regarding the financial practices, procedures, questions about the financials. They wanted to get an estimate and projections of growth in the, in the town and in the region, really. and talk about the residential profile and the fact that there's a large influx of vacation summer homes here,
Right.
that sort of thing. So it's largely from that conference call that we had with Standard & Poor's.
Nice. Yeah, it's very, it's very flattering.
Yes.
How much interest was this when you had this meeting?
So the meeting was just with the analysts, so there were two analysts on the line and then the three of us. And then what the analysts would do is take it back to their credit commit, or their credit committee. It's a group that assigns the rating, and that's a private discussion. We're not allowed to listen in on that. And they come back and report out the rating to us. So,
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
okay, thank you.
John, the resolution is 36.
Got a question
pages
over here.
long.
Oh,
So
no, it's just, no.
if
Oh,
you
you-
just want to make a
Oh,
motion
oh.
to approve the resolution,
Good guy.
how it's worded there.
All right, the resolution is on the board behind it.
Oops, sorry about that.
Janet advised me not to read it since I got tongue-tied, so.
It's 36
It's
pages.
36 pages long, so let's not make a motion that is massive here. 36-page resolution, or a motion,
Most would adopt it by title.
yes. And that's what I suggest.
Janet should give us the Cliff Notes version.
Did you lose the other pages?
Did I lose them? No. Like I said, if you want me to go through this, I'm happy to do it.
Are we comfortable? All right, then I'll move approval of resolution number 1518.
Second.
Motion by Lowry, second by Tidball. Roll call, please.
Goss,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Cavazos,
Aye.
Tidball,
Yes.
Lowry.
Aye.
Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. All right, I made a grave error here. I skipped over the administrator's report. There was a sigh of relief, but not anymore.
What? I threw it away. Working on the stewardship grant for the Gills Rock properties, going through the requirements for a grant. There's a lot of steps to take in there, and normally a lot of this stuff has to be done before signing up and closing the deal on the grant, but because we have a letter of retroactivity from the DNR and the feds, we don't have to do a lot of this until we're getting assured that we're going to have a grant, and that's going to be a hurdle here because we're going for the category of urban green space, which means we're going to have to show a large transient population during the summertime, which shouldn't be too hard to figure out. If we can get numbers that will satisfy the grant people and work with the tourism zone on this, we'll see how that goes. We'll look at that after we get the the documents signed and actually own the property. Sister Bay Utilities met on November 13th. Kind of uneventful. Do you recall if they scheduled a December meeting? I don't.
I didn't.
I
they
sent
did.
an email today. I don't know if there's a December meeting or not. Election notices in the paper. Nomination papers are due by the 2nd of January in the town office. Tax bills will be going out next week. The bottom line on that shows a overall increase of 21 cents per $1,000 of valuation. The smart growth hearing was held on the 28th. That's ready to be adopted by the town board at some point upon recommendation of the plan commission. Cedar Dell, the survey is done. The town crew is going to start working there when weather permits and time permits. It's kind of interesting because the traveled portion of the road actually deviates out of the right-of-way in places, so we'll have to look at bringing it back in a couple of areas there to make it go, put it where it should go. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions anybody has?
So, but you're telling me that the DNR wants us to show them that we have a transient tourist population?
Part of that,
It's almost like they don't know Wisconsin.
well, they're looking for numbers.
Numbers, yeah.
And the people that do the granting are trying to, they need backup when this gets submitted to the powers that be that shows that there's a lot of people coming in using the area, and it's going to be a little difficult to pinpoint things around Gills Rock exactly. But she did mention Sister Bay using some of their numbers, so we're going to start working on that and see what we can get for numbers. We don't know how they're going to look at what we submit, and it's going to be fingers crossed on that whole process. So
Do we know what kind of number were they?
see what kind
Tens of
of
thousands,
what we
hundreds
got
of
for a
thousands?
year-round population, then we'll see what we get up here during the summertime. I had mentioned getting some statistics from the ferry line of how many people they ferry over there, but then they said, well, maybe, maybe not, because they're kind of going through the town and not really staying here if they're going to the island.
Does it count if they eat at a restaurant?
Restaurants, motels, if we can get, show what the motels do in the summertime versus the wintertime. showing an influx of people. If the tourism zone numbers can reflect some of that stuff, we'll pull that in, and we'll be working with you and whomever else we have to get, when we get that put together, we'll send that in right away to see if that's gonna satisfy what they're looking for, before we get too involved in all the rest of the requirements for the actual grant itself.
I was thinking that restaurants for sure would have numbers of people who
Yeah.
come through every day.
That'll be a good one to use, I think, I hope.
Okay, any other questions anybody has? All right, if not, going on to number 8, consider memorandum of understanding from Door County Economic Development Corporation. Just as a reminder, I had brought up in, I believe it was July, a suggestion that we consider a community development outreach person. Mickey Resch said I should talk to Paige Funkhauser at Door County Economic Development. We had a rather long discussion on a Friday afternoon in August. To make a long story short, Paige went back, talked to Jim, and there's been a lot of discussion on their part as to how they may come in and assist the town. And as Bud has pointed out on a number of occasions, my focus has been on creating a stronger economy in the town as much as we possibly can, plus the retention of young people and the attraction of younger people into our community. Jim has a presentation to make to us tonight. The interviews that we had with the 3 board candidates kind of reinforced, I think, what he is going to suggest to us tonight. So I'll turn it over to him and let him take on.
Thank you. Good evening. Good to see you all this evening. It's not 36 pages. And I'll just kind of point the index finger when we go on to the next one, if that'll click over for you.
And to get to the next one, I'm hitting enter?
That should do it, yeah.
Okay.
So bottom line, Door County Economic Development Organization, hopefully you're all familiar with us. We're entering our 30th year, starting in April. It's a public-private organization, so our financing comes from both the public and private sector, and it's about 50-50. We focus on the needs of business and on the needs of the community, and our mission statement's coming up in a few slides here. Go ahead.
That didn't work.
Or just page down, try that. There you go. The things that we focus on, for example, are entrepreneurial development, especially in an artisan county like we have here. That's a big deal, is working with artisans. Non-traditional finance, a lot of projects, we've been in a pretty cheap money time, so projects have been easier to finance, but we're getting in a tighter money time. So we take every business plan and work with them individually to find the best way to match the sources of financing up for the uses, which is what the business plan delivers. Workforce development, 10 years ago that meant trying to create jobs because we had more people looking for jobs than we had jobs for the people. Today, there are over 400 manufacturing jobs unfilled right now in Door County alone. Over 100,000 statewide. And we're talking family sustaining wage jobs, benefits, that sort of thing. And so we're deploying a lot of strategies to attract more workforce, permanent workforce to Door County. Site selection support, when people want to locate a business, working with them for the appropriate site. You know, you want to have it in the right area. You don't want industrial in a residential area. And attraction marketing. Now, that's not to get in the way of the Door County Visitor Center's work. They do phenomenal job. Out of 72 counties, there's no one better than DCVB with what they do, but attraction marketing means attracting various businesses in that might fill retail gaps, complementary businesses It also means, you know, when we're working with an individual municipality, working with them specifically on attraction marketing for their community.
Jim, in terms of workforce development, are those jobs going begging because they're not, the workers are not trained, highly trained enough?
It's part of it. You know, the skills gap even existed back, I started in economic development in 2011. We had the skills gap then when we had a high unemployment rate statewide. So we've always had that match, and it's continuing to be a thing because we have more automation coming in because of the lack of workforce. So we need a higher skilled workforce to accomplish that. But the county, I spent the last 4 years in Sheboygan County before I moved up to Door County this year. And, you know, there we had thousands of entry-level positions, $35,000, $40,000 a year to start, available. Out of those 400 jobs, 400-plus jobs that we have available here right now, I would say about half of those would be entry-level positions where you'd have 2,080 hours a year with benefits. So it's there's been there's a lot of retirements going on. You know, we're in a negative feedback loop, and what I mean by that is we've got 2 people retiring for every 1 entering the workforce. We're not sustainable, and so there are definitely some strategies that we're deploying to solve that. In Sheboygan County, it was making sure that Sheboygan County had everything it needed, and it's the same thing here. Matter of fact, in the last few months, we added a workforce development project manager, Christina Studebaker. She's somehow related to David and Karen, and she's focused solely on not just the workforce of the future, which is working with our 5 school districts, but also addressing the workforce issues that we have today.
So some of these manufacturing jobs would be jobs that now people from outside of the county, Brown County and Outagamie, are coming up to do, that we
Yes.
could do those.
That's
try to do
my
those
goal.
here ourselves.
That's my goal, because frankly, the shelf is bare here as far as really people looking for jobs. There's, I'm sure, some people looking for jobs, but the unemployment rate is at a historical low here. And so, yeah, definitely attracting people from outside the area, which is something that's really unheard of. I mean, we're known as the absolute mecca for tourism, you know, because of the beauty here, because of the amenities here. But it's never been a place that's been on people's minds, that I could come actually and live there and work there, put my kids in the school districts. That's really never been something that we've had to offer. We're fortunate that we have that position today to be in. And it's important that we do that, because I'm going to show you a trend that's concerning me. One of the first things I kind of circled, you know, when I started breaking our numbers down. But just wanted to show you quick the kind of relationships. These are the organizations we work with in economic development. So we've got a team of 4 at DCDC, but it's not just us. We've got a lot of resources that we tap into to make it happen. I mean, I would 2 others that I could include on here that I didn't think to is SBU and WPS are also resources that we can use to address the things that we're focused on. So our mission, bottom line, is dedicated to improving the economic vitality for the county and its residents. So that doesn't just center on the business community. That means that if there are barriers to your sustainability here, I read the broadband survey, which was excellent at Liberty Grove. You're ahead of the curve on that. And I'm seeing people say, hey, look, I've got a business here. I don't think I want to keep my business here. I don't think I want to stay here, is some of the feedback we're getting in that broadband survey. That speaks directly to a challenge that we've got to address, is the economic vitality. Because if we keep losing people, I mean, it's going to harm, you know, it's going to harm our businesses, it's going to harm the tax base. And this is the number that I've really got heartburn on, and collectively it's only 2.1% over the last 17 years, but it's a negative line, and this is our population trend. This is the county, by the way, the county population trend, and the source on this is the census. So in 2000, that was a census. In 2010, that was the census number for our county. And then every year they project out our numbers, where they see us heading. And so as of July of last year, their most recent projected number for us is since 2010 is a decline of another 1.1%. So that's, of course, a warning for our school districts. It's a warning for our tax base. It's a warning for our retail businesses that that want to be in business 12 months out of the year, many of them. And so it's something we have to turn around. Doesn't mean we want 10% growth or anything like that. We don't really match up with that kind of strategy, but we sure don't want to be declining.
This would be permanent residents. I'm curious to think how that would, the tourism itself, I believe, has grown. So that has to factor in there somewhere too with a net.
They don't count as population, the folks
I
that just
see.
come and visit.
Sure.
Don't factor in there.
But they do factor in the
They do.
economics.
One of the things that I do like, because I didn't come here just to complain, because the point is we're doing things about this, is not that we're just sitting there and just shouting the alarm bell without solutions, but retail sales tax collections for Door County for the first 10 months of this year up 5.3%. So that's good news.
Does that still include all the sales?
It's that 0.5%, so whatever went into that 0.5% is what that is specifically. And there were some down months. Spring was not kind to us here, and a couple of those months reflected that. And then I think it was September all of a sudden jumped way up. So it's overall 10 months looking really good. Looks like we'll be positive for the year. So it says that our retailers are doing well, but if we're talking about those core residents, we're definitely kind of following that negative feedback
Well,
loop.
to expand on Nancy's question though, Jim, not so much tourists, but people who own property, who may come up only a couple of weeks a year, is that on the decline as well?
I don't know that. This would reflect permanent residents. So if a person was here half-time and Florida half-time, if they're 6 months and a day in Florida, my expectation is they're not included in this
right.
number.
Right.
But Door County is a challenge, because we do have a lot of seasonal. So it's vexing to be able to really totally get your arms around that.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the positives about looking at the retail sales collection.
Excuse me,
Yes, sir.
do you have an age breakdown for this population decline? I mean, primarily younger people or older people?
I'm in the
or
process of doing
people
that, but
passing away, or-
we have a demographic issue. We definitely stack older demographics versus younger demographics. That kind of speaks to that negative feedback loop again, where we've got 2 retiring with 1 entering the workforce. It's the same thing that we have this big bell, in those older demographics. We're a retirement area, so we're going to have some of that naturally. But most counties in Wisconsin are going through that big baby boomer. I'm toward the end of the baby boomers, and we're all moving, into that, and that's that big bell, and so it creates a challenge for 20 years from now. We're not bringing enough behind us. And a lot of what we have to do at DCDC is worrying about 20 years from now. Now, our strategic work plan that we're presenting to our board next Monday is about next year and a little bit beyond that, but we do have to take heed to what the future is.
Addressing that big bell that you just described, and backtracking just a little bit, one of the huge challenges, even though there's work available here, is enticing people to come here because affordable housing, there's a dearth of affordable housing. But as that big bell goes away and the baby boomers go away, may that perhaps be an instigator to help solve the housing issue?
Somewhat, but the price points are a challenge, is one thing that worries me. And that's the next slide that we have up there is what are the things, some of the things that we're focused on right now. Well, broadband, and we got to get there now.
Yeah.
Tech Council, of which Dave and Karen Studebaker volunteer for that, met yesterday, and we laid out a 3-step parallel track plan, working on all at the same time for addressing and coming up with a solution for broadband. We want people's stuff to work. You've got an excellent update to your smart growth plan, and that's calling for more home-based businesses, is being able to have that technology for there. So we've got to match that. And so broadband with a plan is what we've got on our radar. Because Liberty Grove is head of the curve on doing the survey, by the way, we can start focusing here. The island's going to have fiber when the rest of that line gets through in the next few days, hopefully. That power line is also going to have embedded in it fiber, so now we have fiber out to the island, which is great. We'll have to get the work to get the loops built out yet, but we are in a strong place to deliver that because Ensight, Cellcom, made that investment of fiber, all the way up to the top here. So we can work off of that background. I don't know what the plan's going to look like, but I think we're going to have a stronger understanding by mid-year next year what that plan's going to look like. We met with somebody from the Public Service Commission. That's not WPS, but the PSC. And we met with them today and kind of outlined what we've been working on, just trying to figure it out ourselves, and they felt we were way ahead of the curve based on other counties that they had just been in Kewaunee County before us. So they think we're kind of laying it out, so we'll keep moving in that direction. And there's a model out there, Reedsburg, the city of Reedsburg is kind of like hit a bullseye. I don't know if everybody gets my Monday 5 a.m. email blast, but I'll have a story in there. If not, this coming Monday on the 17th, I think I laid that story, and it's a very interesting story. We'll probably go out there with members of our tech council to solve that. So getting back to your housing story, we've got a few things there. Is that it's 30% more expensive to build a home today than what it was 2 years ago. When the tariff war started, and that starts driving up all those prices. The millennials and of course the Zs that come behind them have different expectations for housing. Whereas some of the baby boomers, kind of wanted an acreage and didn't mind mowing lawn and that sort of thing. Things are changing. There's some different trends there, and so it doesn't have to be a 2,600, 2,800 square foot house anymore. It can be a 1,500 square foot house. Smaller lots. A lot of them don't want to mow lawns. In Sheboygan Falls, one of the municipalities I worked with down in Sheboygan County, we came up with a specific kind of zoning, vintage zoning for a subdivision, just for that kind of a strategy. It filled up right away. Now, Liberty Grove, is very distinct. The neat thing about Door County is no municipality is the same here. And so I think that, once again, going back to the smart growth plan, what I'm seeing is specific expectations for housing. We are fortunate that we do have adjacent that we've got sewer and water. So I know that's kind of complicated, right now. but if that all works out well, at least we have that, because it's a lot more difficult where you don't have access to sewer and water to do certain things. And so we definitely want to heed the fact that there's a smart growth plan here. I realize it hasn't quite been ratified yet, but the Planning Commission was unanimous with it. And I think a nice job was done there.
Jim, we had discussed briefly, not really in depth, with your predecessor about the fact that the town has some available, let's say, vacant property that was being considered for not a donation for housing. Is that something that's
I think it's
of interest?
It's a great asset. It's definitely of interest. I would consider that low-hanging fruit, is to figure out how to use that, be it for housing, and I've never tapped right down to the site, so I haven't been there. But the other thing I've got up there is the food and beverage manufacturing industry that we've got here is amazing. Something that I learned in Sheboygan County, my team's really tired hearing about Sheboygan County, but I tell you a little bit, in economic development, it's not all about manufacturing, but manufacturing is one of those things that typically brings in high wages, benefits, those sorts of things that help your sustainability. Sheboygan County has the 4th highest concentration of manufacturing in the entire country. Companies like Kohler, Sargento, Johnsonville, Vollrath, Old Wisconsin are all based there. Then you've got durable and non-durable manufacturing. Okay, well, what is that? Well, durable manufacturing is Kohler making a toilet or a sink or something like that. Non-durable is Sargento and Johnsonville and Masters Gallery and the others making food products. Those are things that you get used and you're done with them. When the recession hit 10 years ago, the eastern part of Sheboygan County, which is all durable manufacturing, got pounded. I mean, a lot of people laid off, double-digit unemployment. Plymouth, Wisconsin, which is part of the county where Sargento is and Johnsonville's nearby and stuff, they never slowed down. So doing everything that we can along the food and beverage manufacturing side is really important in my opinion. I think that's one of those areas in Door County where we can grow it. And I really think that we can grow it based more on the north side. And that's where I'll go back, Lou, to your question is that might be another option for that. I can't say if it's right adjacent to housing, and I mean, people don't want, even quiet manufacturing right in their backyard, I get that, but highest and best use, I guess, is what that comes down to. I think it's an asset, whatever direction we can go with it, but the philosophy that I think is important that I want to convey is that we're very project management orientated. We're really playing a lot of catch up. We did have some unusual things with us. Bill did an incredible job over 28 years with the DCDC. People have told me that maybe was a little focused on Sturgeon Bay, and then we had that transition with Caleb there a short time, and he successfully ran for office. We're playing a little catch up right now, and so we've really got to hit our marks because we keep getting closer and closer to the next recession. I don't know if it's going to be next month or 10 years from now, but you know it's coming. So catching up is really important, and it's about not talking about things, it's about actually accomplishing things, which is really the point of this conversation tonight. The other thing I just wanted to point out is attraction marketing, because Liberty Grove, and sorry if I sound a little hippie sometimes, but it's a really cool town, and there's a lot of things that are really cool. Notwithstanding the island, it's the end, right? I mean, that's really pretty cool. It's a great place to stand, for example, because of that. Something John talked about first time we met is more water frontage than any other municipality. Shoreline. That's a big deal. That needs to be like marketed, so we got to build on the back of what Door County does so well and drive that home. Because, it doesn't take a lot to move the meter here. We're not talking about doubling the population or anything like that. That's not feasible, and I don't think that would be desirable necessarily here. But if we can start pushing, some of those things that are just natural assets that we've got here, that's where I kind of get into the attraction marketing, that we've got some things that really make this place distinct. The other thing is that we've got boroughs within a town, which is something that's pretty cool. And each of those boroughs, one's different than the other, So, you can have strategies by a borough in addition to the overall town strategy. That requires some thinking. It requires resources, bringing in some of those logos that I had there, WDC, WIDA, all those, bringing them to the table, Extension working with us. But 6 years ago, that was already done here. And, I don't think a lot of stuff got done off of that. I went back and took a look at the work that was done here. I don't know if any of you were a part of that. The key is, and this is what I'm suggesting is in going back to what John set up, is that in his kind of thinking and talking to Pages, well, what if we get a part-timer up here, pay him $30,000 a year and have him start working on this stuff. And I think that kind of centers on the fact that it is a solution. Economic development does not work very well with volunteers. We're doing some of Tech Council with volunteers, but let's face it, volunteers have other things in their lives. And that's why DCDC is actually paid to make sure that we're hitting our marks, that we're executing things on our strategic plan. So what I had suggested is okay, what if we front burnered Liberty Grove and took a budget, against a minimum number of hours, and we'll always over deliver. We're gonna honor promise and over-deliver. And then potentially set another budget aside for grant matches or something like that to kind of kick off some of the projects that we seek to accomplish in 2019. And that's where the memorandum of understanding came from, and said, okay, we'll front burner this, we'll put the team against it. The team by, Paige and myself will largely be the people doing it. Christina's workforce, so if that means that we've got employers that need help for workforce, we could throw her at it too. So that's kind of what this boils down to. Is just the proposal. So what are we talking about? We'd be talking about, it's a nice thing about the winter is it's a great time to get a lot of stuff done inside because it's a little harder to get stuff done outside. Is I think we can take that plan that was done 6 years ago, update it, bring in resources. Nalita Burr is our regional representative from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. She's brilliant. And so I'd want her here to help us lay out the plan, determine what kind of resources are out there to accomplish. And by the way, I'm suggesting that there's a town plan that's in that SMART plan probably already. And then what are some of the things the individual boroughs would want that maybe we could hit some marks with the boroughs. And so by the time March rolls around, we pretty much know, this is aggressive, I realize, we pretty much know what we think we can do in 2019. And if it can't get done in 2019, we'll know why and then when it can get done. But what are the things that we can get done in 2019? And you kind of build upon success. So the MOU is built as a series of 3 one-year agreements, but if you're not happy, there's no agreement. It's not a contract. It's an investment DCDC to front burner and fast track some things. I'm guessing other municipalities down the road see this and they're probably going to want to be a part of it. Sturgeon Bay is a big investor in us, so they do get a lot of that attention naturally. But I just think because that work was done 6 years ago, because of where John and Paige's conversation was, is I think it's right to say, okay, let's have a part-time employee get, but the biggest difference would be is I know my background's in something very different. My first career, was in something very different than economic development. When I got involved in economic development, took all that training on, it opened my eyes to what you could get done in economic development. So rather than pay for that learning curve, we'd front burner this and go to work with you. So last slide is, do you have any questions? And let that marinate.
Thoughts?
So, I know, so my children are all in their 30s, but they went through Gibraltar, which has had declining enrollment, I think every year, Janet, pretty much for the last 20 years. So just locally, we have a smaller workforce. I think that's also impacting our employees available. I know where I work, it definitely does. And it also feels like for the parents who are business owners or business workers, the further we get time-wise away from that Gibraltar, say, group, it's harder and harder to tap in there. Now, my youngest, who is now 31, his senior year at Gibraltar, they brought back what used to be shop class, industrial arts, actually measure things out and cut them and do the math to figure out if you're right and that sort of thing. And it seemed like in Sturgeon Bay that was coming back too, and they had programs where at the time they would take kids who were showing an aptitude or interest in that work, and they were going down to Sturgeon Bay to the tech schools and looking at their, what we would call their shop programs and what was available for them. And there were employers that were, they had, it looked like from the data, they had excellent job placement. That when you went through those programs, like 75% of those students coming out with certificates were working in that field.
With good wages, too.
With,
is that
with
it
good
really
wages,
works.
and it kind of would feed back because they were staying in their communities and becoming property owners, so through their taxes, just, feeding back into the system. I don't know what that's looking like now in the last 10 years at our local school.
Tell you, Southern Door has added a Fab Lab, if you're familiar with those things, and it's been so successful because a lot of the adults are using it too. They're actually applying for a grant. We just wrote them a support letter for a second phase of that, so that's been success. I don't know where Gibraltar is at on that. And the fact that you bring that up, then Christina, our workforce development person, then I would like to probably bring her probably more on the front end of this to work with the district. Just to see what we can do with that. That's really about it, retaining your talent.
Right.
And I can tell you that most counties, that's your primary strategy is keep the talent you've got, because it's doubly and triply hard to get them from someplace else because everybody else needs talent. It's something that, they've been doing the high school home build down there. First it was a collaborative with Kewanee School District, Kewanee County School District, and then it became Door County on its own. And they've built those, at least the last two, in Sturgeon
And
Bay.
in Sturgeon Bay.
Well, this one's in the Southern Door School District actually, but
Okay.
it's in the city of Sturgeon Bay. It's kind of weird how their districts are drawn up. I really want to do a northern build. We had at least one student from the island wanted to participate, but transportation is just not feasible. I think that there are some innovative ways that we can go about that. We could maybe do a green build or something like that. More people that are interested in coming our area today are definitely interested in sustainability. Different types of things than like I'll say what my generation was looking to build. And so I'm wondering, that's sort of something I'm wondering is if we can do it. And I've kind of given Christina a suggestion for how I think we might accomplish it. So I hope I'm
No.
probably over answering your question, but connectivity to the districts is everything.
Well, what do you need from us?
Well, if, I have not had this approved by my board yet. My board
Okay.
meeting is on Monday, so I'm meeting with my executive board on Friday. And then if they're supportive of it, and I fully expect that they will be, I've discussed this with them, then I expect that the board will be supportive on Monday. And so, we'd certainly want to know what your wishes are. It takes two parties to make the relationship go. If the town of Liberty Grove is willing to go forward, and our board, once they ratify it, we would start laying plans for January is really the game plan. I've already discussed the concept with Nalita, and she's always got a million ideas. But
What would January encompass? What would it do? Would you invite anybody and everybody to come in?
I think so. I think you want to keep it broad because people want to know what's going on. I would want to make sure that the business community, that it worked around their schedule, so that they were at the table, but I think you have to have a big tent to start. And I think it works off of two things, the SMART plan, because whatever you're working on can't be contradicting the SMART plan, right? That's why you did all that work, 3 or 4 years or whatever. And then the other thing is I really think that we should go back to that work that was done 6 years ago, and say, okay, how many of these things are still relevant? How many of these things are still important? Is there something more important that's in the Smart Growth Plan or that somebody has for an idea? But when we had that one meeting that I participated in here, I was hearing the business community saying, hey, I'd like some more business. So I think it starts right up front, is starting big tent and then kind of breaking it down. Hopefully people stay interested. But as DCDC, we're the engine that keeps it going. Okay, so it's like broadband. We laid it on a whiteboard today. How how this is all gonna happen now, but we're not looking to anybody else for, you know, we're gonna bring in resources, but we are the ones that have to carry that ball forward.
That's my concern, is you get a bunch of people at an initial meeting that are really gung-ho, but then as you go along, it drops down, and you gotta try to keep their interest up somehow.
With broadband, for example, we kind of break it out by their talents. And so, you know, you have techie people, I'm not one, you know, but, you know, then you've got people that can determine, you know, the finance aspects of it. You've got other people that are really willing to do the municipal outreach, you know, so we kind of break it down along the talents. Some people may fall out, it may not just be enough, you know, and, you know, then all of a sudden we have a nice April and then people are gone. But for me, by April, we have to know what we're working on, where we want that thing to be, what the resources are that we're wanting to tap. We want to be writing grant, you know, applications and stuff at that point. So I think we absolutely have to aggressively move on that first phase of projects. And maybe it's just one, and maybe it's just 2 or 3, I don't know. I certainly don't want to be the decider of that, because this has got to be Liberty Grove's, ultimately what Liberty Grove wants. Nalita will come in with ideas. She'll get people excited.
I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, when you think back what we did with NWTC, we've got another opportunity here. And the broadband, I mean, the work.
I look at this thing from the standpoint that you're pretty generic in business opportunity in Liberty Grove. And my personal feeling is, you have to ask myself, why would someone who has the choice of establishing a business in Sturgeon Bay with the amenities they have down there, come up to Liberty Grove and establish a business? And I think I have a hard time answering that question. But on the other hand, I think you have to define the nature of the business you're talking about, because some businesses might do very well up here, and other businesses would do better, you know, down in Sturgeon Bay. So you kind of have to develop a plan to bring definition to what are your attractions that you mentioned in that thing?
Well, I couldn't agree more, because, you know, they're very different, you know. Believe it or not, people don't even know Sturgeon Bay is in Door County, a lot of people. So that's a challenge that they're dealing with. The businesses that we would work, if people want to be part of something that's growing, and I don't mean major percentages or something like that, but they want to attach to a vision. So businesses, and this includes if we have businesses that want to turn over, succession planning and that sort of thing, it can actually enhance the sale of that to that next owner, because they're buying into a vision for where a community is going. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but it definitely requires vision.
I think so much for coming and all this great information. I think I'm anxious to find out, you know, the next steps as you described, then trying to schedule something that works with the various stakeholders. Is there the ability to get access to that work you keep referring to that was done 6 years ago?
Sure.
Sooner rather than later?
Yeah, do you, if you don't have it here, I can get it to you. John, I'll fire it up to you, and okay, no problem.
Or, you know, we have contact information, but however, it makes sense for it to be distributed, the way they'd like to distribute it, and then,
Are you okay if I send
yeah,
it up to
no,
John?
that's-
Okay.
I'm just saying it out loud for everybody's benefit, because I'd like to be able to refer to that too, because you keep pointing to that as being a road, a little bit of a map, and we often find that there's been a lot of energy and work and things that have been done that just kind of get put on a shelf somewhere. And that'll be a big part of what is going to be important to us, is being actually to take some of these things and find the right people to run with it.
It's key, we've got to do things,
Yeah.
you know, we can't talk about things, we've got to do things.
And we can't can't find the right word to say the food and beverage opportunity up here, whether it's a durable good processor, as you're saying, but that really does fit the profile of the demographic of the family type person or business. And I think as Carl was mentioning about definition, whether it's a plan, you know, I've always found that creating a profile of the person that you're trying to attract, of course, creating a profile of the business, but if we're looking at people and that can afford a home, what type of business would they do? And then put ourselves in that role. And what would it take for me to be able to come here and do that? You start to really learn a lot more about, you know, what you actually have to accomplish to be able to make that happen. So I'm looking forward to maybe, you know, working on that together, because I think that will help get things started a lot.
Excellent. The key is to execute. It's not just and I don't know what happened 6 years ago. Sam, who was with our organization, I mean, was really good at his job, and, you know, but if the will wasn't there at the organization at that point in time to say, okay, now that we've got this stuff, it's a great PowerPoint, well, what are we gonna do? There was just no next step. And so that's why I say, if we do one thing, if we do three things in 2019, the key is everybody in agreement that these things are gonna help us take a step forward? And I always keep that population trend, you know, in the back of my mind and saying, this is something that we're seeking to stop the decline and start, you know, making sure that we're sustainable, that we're showing that growth in our student populations. Because everything with our school districts, you know, because of the tax base that we have here, if we don't have the student population, we're in big trouble. And with those population declines, because of the way, you know, Wisconsin doles out the money, it works against us. So we need the population.
You just,
Is your board gonna give you some direction as, what they're gonna want for money or fee from us for whatever's gonna go on here?
What I suggested in the MOU is $10,000 a year to DCDC. I'm also suggesting, if you can, through your room tax or however you do it, setting aside a $20,000 budget to reserve for grant matching and that sort of thing. I mean, those are the town's funds, they're segregated, and we would probably make recommendations for how those could be used for the larger products. So the MOU, and I apologize if you don't have a copy of that, but John's got it, right? No?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I don't think it changed after we
Oh, okay.
worked on that, but I'll send you the version.
Yep.
I've got a hard copy of it, actually. But it's, and then it's, like I said, it's 3-year agreement, 3 one-year agreements. Because if you're ever